everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chats with the Cats. And I have with me today one of my very favorite cats from my original hometown, Chicago, Illinois. Actually, I think you reside in Evanston, but
Yep.
but this is Chris Greene, the great tenor saxophonist from the Chicago area, and I am so happy to get reunited with Chris. We were just talking before I punched record about how it's been a few years since we've seen each other in person. So
I think so. It might have been. I'm guessing that at the fallen once great jazz venue in my hometown, Pete Miller's. Was that the last time we saw each other?
I don't remember the name. It was a restaurant that had a stage.
Yep.
In the bar
Pete Miller's.
area.
Yep.
They're not doing that anymore?
Well, no, it's not even. Pete Miller's folded up, I want to say, maybe just a touch before the shutdown. So, so it's a completely different restaurant now. So
that's a shame.
No light. Yeah, it's a nice place.
Yeah, it was a nice, they had a nice little stage there. It looked like, just enough room for your quartet. So, yeah. But it was good. It was good to meet you then in person and meet the guys in the band. And, it was a real pleasure that night. And I don't get to Chicago as often anymore now that my parents are no longer with us. But when I do get back there, I'll definitely make it a point to try to see you guys if you're performing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have definitely a scotch that needs to be imbibed at some point.
Yes, that's been on. It's been in the cards for several years now, and
yes, sir.
But I should mention that Chris and I are both fans of a nice single malt scotch. So,
yes, sir, absolutely, 100%.
Well, one of the things that we definitely need to talk about is your brand new album, Conversance, with your quartet, Mark Pion on bass and Damian Espinosa on piano and keyboards, Steve Corley on drums, and Chris Greene on tenor sax. And the first thing I want to say about it, Chris, is, and I've listened to it once now, all the way through, and the vibe I get from it is that it sounds to me like you're coming from a very happy place, a good place in your life. That's the way it struck me.
It's fun. I guess I think about this all the time. Like, it's such a cliche to say that, albums are snapshots of your life or where you were, but it's definitely at a really cool. I mean, I always put these out at really interesting times in my life and whatever, but this just happens to be a really great time where everybody in the family's healthy, the band is going strong. You've got this great new association with this great Chicago label that's basically taking a bunch of a fair amount of the business responsibility off my plate, so I can focus more on like music, which I did anyway, but it was always like, I don't know, half and half or 60-40 or whatever. But, now I can, because I've got this kind of like label with an infrastructure and a history and everything. That's, that association's been great. And and I just think we're sounding really, 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 really good as a band. So it's been great.
I definitely want to, talk about the band a little bit more, but let's first talk about the label since you brought that up. So tell us a little bit about the label, and then because this is going to be a YouTube video that goes worldwide, so not everyone may be familiar with the label. And also, is there a possibility that maybe the label will reissue some of your previous albums? So.
That's always a possibility. Really, so we've put out at least 9 or 8 other albums previously, and I've always done it independently and never minded doing it. You know, I never ever ruled out the possibility of working with a label, but it was always one of those things where it needed to be the right situation. I mean, you know, I'm sure you know, it's like it's one thing to have somebody work for you, work with you, but if they're going to do something that you can't do, you know, or they're going to bring a skill set to the table that you don't have, you know, I'm all for it. But with other situations that had been offered to me previously, it was always the kind of thing where, well, we can do this for you, and I'm like, well, I can do that. I've been doing that for a while. You're not necessarily going to do it any better or any different than I was doing it. And so I just kind of resigned myself that, okay, you know, I'm just going to keep doing it myself. And so kind of through a series of really, really cool events, namely, I'd done a bunch of gigs with a bunch of artists on this label, Pravda, which is a label that's been around Chicago they just celebrated their 40th year in business, and they never previously done any kind of jazz record at all. It always been like kind of indie rock or punk rock or power pop or country or throwback soul, just a kind of a bunch of different genres, but they never really had any jazz on their label. And so I'd done a bunch of gigs, like I'd arranged horns for one particular artist, or I'd been in a band with several other people that were on the label. And little did I know that they all were basically telling the owner, Ken Goodman, about me, and we should try to work together. And so flash forward to the summer of 2023, I'm actually playing a gig with two people who actually have a band called the Handcuffs, which are on the label. And I basically just finished the set with this particular gig with this particular band. And I'm walking off the stage, and this gentleman named Ken walks up to me and says, "Hey, I really like what you're doing." And I just figured he was a music fan, whatever. I'm like, "Hey, thank you very much. I'm going to go get this beer over here. And very nice to meet you, sir. Very nice to meet you, sir. Thank you for coming. It's really nice to meet you." And so I'm at the bar, and Chloe, my friend, singer, saxophone player, guitar player, is like, "Hey, did you meet my friend? Did you meet my friend Ken?" I said, "Yeah, seems like a nice guy." It's like, "Did you talk to him?" I was like, "No, should I go talk?" "I think you better get your butt over there and talk to him. He owns the label that I'm on." "What label's that?" "It's Pravda Records." "Pravda Records, the indie rock label, all right?" He's like, "Yeah, but he's really interested in you and he wants to work with you. So you get your ass over there and talk to him." I was like, "Hey, Ken, hey, remember me, the idiot that blew you off? Hey, how you doing?" You know, and he was totally cool about it. He was like, "Hey, man, you know, hey, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. I've heard a lot, you know, I've been on my radar for a long time. You know, are you guys putting out any new music?" I was like, "Well, we're kind of getting some stuff together and working on some new stuff." And he was like, he hands me his card and he's like, "Hey, you know, if you want some help, we want to work together, give me a call." And I'm, you know, and I figured, okay, label guy, and it's probably whatever. And I kind of did my deep dive, and I find out that this label that's been around for 40 years, and all these people that I've worked with over the years are on this label. And I'm like, oh shoot, this is kind of serious. And so I called him, we met, we talked, and just kind of hammered out the details. And it's been really cool. So yeah, I'm super excited about it, just because it's like it's a situation where, like I said, they never put out a jazz record before. They've got a network of just music fans, people that may like jazz, may not like jazz, but just people who like good music. And they've cultivated this kind of like roster of great musicians and great bands. And so it's an honor to be a part of the whole thing. So
it's a really nice approach, isn't it? You know, kind of not concentrating on any one specific genre, but just good music.
Absolutely. And what's cool is that it was never like, I've been offered other situations before, been kind of like the stuff has been on the table, like and you know, I mean, you know, we're fairly an eclectic band. We play jazz, but we like, you know, many other influences in the pot. And so there have been other situations where it's been, you know, we really like what you do, but we need you to be, you know, more straight, you know, more instant, you know, more straight ahead, like more traditional stuff. And then, or it's been in the other thing where it's like, we like the quirky stuff you do, but we'd like you to aim for more like clear channel, smooth jazz stuff. And no shade or no disrespect to either camp, because I've got some very good friends on either side that do some fantastic work. You know, I've got some really good friends who do smooth jazz and contemporary jazz. So, you know, I'm not knocking them at all. It's just, you know, we as a band and as people in the band, we genre hop all over the place. So it was basically nice to be in a situation with Ken where it's just like, you make a record that you believe in, and if I really like it, we're going to put it out. We're going to find an audience for it, and it's been fantastic.
That's awesome. You guys want to do what you guys do, and you've been doing it for a long time, and that's a nice it's a nice segue to something that I wanted to discuss with you, and that is you've been together with these same three guys now for many years, and I think that first of all, that's not always typical in jazz. A lot of players, they swap around, and you do a record with one particular, say, quartet, and then the next record, some different cats. And,
Right.
you guys have been together, so you know each other so well. And I think that really comes across on your records, particularly your new one. I think that cohesiveness is there because you guys know each other so well musically.
It's been but it's funny, like we know each other very well. I know how Damien plays, I know how Steve plays, I know how Mark plays, but we're always surprised. Thankfully there's always like surprise in there. It's like a like a really good marriage. Like the person, but there's gonna be always a surprise, like, oh wow, you're into that, or wow, I would have never expected that that insight to come from this person that I know so well, or whatever. So Damien's always surprised on the bandstand. Like they're always surprised me with the things that they can do or the things that they can tap into, in real time. But we know each other really well, and we're genuinely good friends off the stand. It's like we just, like, if you were to, I mean, you've hung out with us before. It's like,
yeah,
we almost oftentimes off the bandstand, we're basically talking about anything other than jazz. And like we'll get into the jazz music nerdy kind of thing, but oftentimes we're talking about stuff completely other than music. We're talking about women, we're talking about sports, we're talking about dumb 80s movies, it almost oftentimes anything other than music or what we just played. And so that goofy chemistry kind of like, we basically bring that goofy spirit right back onto the stage. And, hopefully the audience, even though like maybe like, let's say a third or half of them may not necessarily be jazz fans per se, or necessarily have the technical insight into what we're doing, they can at least sense the energy and the chemistry and the goodwill between the four of us.
Yeah, that really it comes across when when you're on stage, but also when I met you guys afterwards and we had a drink together, at the bar, and that camaraderie between all of you was very apparent, and I think that's exactly how our conversation went. I think we were talking Chicago sports and
there
food,
you go, exactly.
Yeah. So the listeners to the Creative Source, my radio program here on soulandjazz.com, are going to be hearing your new album here in upcoming weeks. They're going to hear different tracks from it. If a listener wants to, or a viewer in this case, wants to purchase your album, should they go to the label website? What should they do?
They can go to the label website, pravdamusic.com, or they can go to my website, chrisgreenejazz.com, CHRISGREENE jazz.com. And yeah, you can get it CD, you can get it digitally, and you can also get it on, for the first time ever, you can get it on vinyl, which I'm really excited. That was another sweet part of the whole deal with Ken when we had the meeting. It was like, okay, we're going to do digital, we're going to do CDs, we're going to do the streaming thing, but we're also going to do vinyl. And it was something that I always wanted to do for a while, but it's like, thank you very much. Like it's like my wife, as patient as wonderful as she is, I'm sure. It's one thing to have some unopened CDs, a box of CD overstock down in the basement. Now I'm bringing in, vinyl overstocked. He's like, oh hell no, this is again, this won't work. But actually, Ken brought it up during the meeting. He was like, we're gonna do a vinyl run, and I was like, oh shoot, okay, so that's great. So now thankfully there's this influx of people that really want vinyl, really want the experience of like putting that record on the turntable and listening to it, and so
Yep.
so those people are going to be serviced as well. So I'm super happy about that.
Well, yeah, that's very exciting. And there's a lot of young people that, want that experience. I've seen, my best friend in Europe, and his daughter, she's in her early 20s now, and she loves going to the record store with me and getting some vinyl, and just the whole experience of putting it on the turntable, and of course the sound quality. So yeah, that's I'm glad to hear that, Chris. I'm going to have to put in an order for one of those, and take one off your hands and out of your basement. So
there you go. Thank you. Well, thankfully, again, again, the whole label thing, they're taking that off the plate. They are housing all the stock. So my basement will remain vinyl free, at least of our albums. So
yeah, okay, well, good. What about gigs? Now I know that you guys play regularly in the Chicago area, Evanston, and around town. But any gigs that you want to mention that are coming up? Any gigs that are outside of Chicagoland in the near future?
We got a few. Well, just side question: when will this air fairly soon, or will this?
Yeah, this should go up, in the next week or two, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we will. I guess we have one album release party coming on the 20th. The album will be released and available everywhere on Friday, October 18th. But we're having an album release party 2 days after that at a place called Epiphany Center for the Arts in the South Loop, I believe. 201 South Ashland, I believe. And then we're actually having another one on, which this will probably be more for your anybody listening. We're having another one on Thursday, November 7th at Fitzgerald's in Berwyn. So it's a great little suburb just west of the city. Fitzgerald's, we've had a nice monthly residency there for the past, I guess, almost coming up on 3 years now. But it's typically the second Wednesday of every month. But for the purposes of this party, we're moving it to the Thursday, November 7th.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to have to get you guys out to California sometime, and
absolutely,
and maybe over to the UK, where soulandjazz.com originates from.
Okay,
it'd be really nice. We'll have to talk about that sometime when we get together. Next time I'm in Chicago, I do hope to see you guys. We'll wrap things up by I like to ask artists about other interests. So maybe if you could tell us a current book that you're reading that you're excited about, or a movie that you recently have seen, or maybe somebody else's album that you have listened to that has excited you. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit, but
okay. What, I've been ripping and running, so I'm usually the movie guy, so I haven't really seen a bunch of great movies lately. I will say there's a book that I just started reading. Of all things, it seems it's called The Story of Jazz, by Marshall Stearns. I think I want to say it came out in the 60s, and a friend of mine found it at a garage sale and got it for me. And I let it sit in my queue for like a long time, and I thought, okay, it's going to be the typical stuff that you already know, or maybe something like one of those textbooks that I got in college or whatever. And like, well, okay, whatever, it should be fine. But then I started cracked it open, and I'm pretty much maybe like, I don't know, 70 pages in before we even get to like New Orleans and that kind of thing. The first 70 pages have basically been tracing the evolution of music from like Africa to New Orleans, and just how, I guess it kind of gives us really cool insight on like why certain music developed because of this, not to bring everything down, but because of the slave trade, why certain elements of music developed, say, in like the Caribbean or Brazil or Cuba or whatever, and in America. And what the interesting thing that I guess I never thought about is that the if you were enslaved by the French or the Spanish, you got to keep a lot more of your a lot more of the African culture got preserved there. Whereas America, kind of, if you were enslaved by the British, you kind of had to start from ground, kind of build everything back up from scratch with like church and field songs and everything else. So it was just kind of like a bunch of stuff that I never even thought about. And like I said, it's like this is the first 60 pages, so we haven't even gotten to like Charlie Parker or Louis Armstrong yet. This is just like the bare bones and roots of the music. So that's been blowing my mind.
Yeah, that's a really interesting an interesting topic. Is that, like pre-jazz, the origins of the music, and
right.
Recently taught a history of jazz course at my local community college, and we got into some of that, and it's really fascinating. And I need to learn more about it, so I'm going to have to pick up that book upon your recommendation.
I shoot it to you. And as far as music I've been listening to, I can never pronounce his name. Marcos Valle, a Brazilian singer-songwriter from the 60s and 70s, basically put out this brand new album, and I can find it for you. But it's basically reminiscent of some of the soul stuff he did in the 70s.
Wow.
It's an amazing record, and I will tell you in 7 seconds. Marcos Valle, what is that? I will tell you one more second. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Marcos, there it is. And it is called, it's a brand new one. And I'm going to, Tunel Acústico. I'm mispronouncing it, I know, but just came out. It's an amazing record. It sounds like it could have been made in like 1975, but it just came out recently, and that's been blowing my mind. And the new, I've been telling everybody about the new LL Cool J record, which sounds like what's wrong with you? Like, why are you listening to a guy that's almost 60 years old rapping? I'm like, no, it's amazing because he sounds incredible, and the album is produced by Q-Tip of A Tribe Called Quest, and so those are two aesthetics that you wouldn't necessarily think would go together, but it's an amazing record. So those two records have actually been blowing my mind lately.
Ah, nice. I'm gonna have to check that out. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you and to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time here this morning. And really do hope to get to see you in person for that glass or two of scotch.
Yes, sir. Yes, it needs to happen. It needs to happen sooner than later. Yes, sir.
Listen, please tell the guys I said hello, and that I hope to see them as well. And congratulations to all four of you for the fine new record. Once again, Conversance, the Chris Greene Quartet.
Thank you.
Available as a digital download, as a CD, or as an LP, which is really cool. So whatever is your favorite format. And also congratulations to all the engineers that were involved in terms of mixing and mastering, because it sounds really, really great too.
Thank you. We're actually proud of that. We actually shout out to Rob Ruccia at Uptown Recording. So we did half of it. That's another thing. It's our first studio record since 2017. So we did half the record at Uptown Recording. The stuff that required an acoustic piano, that's because they've got a great acoustic piano there. The other half of the stuff that was the keyboard stuff, we did that actually Mark's got a great studio in his basement actually, and so we did kind of the stuff that required electric keyboard there. And I'm proud to say I let a friend of mine listen to the record, very, very savvy friend of mine, Markwell Jordan, who's recorded with us before. But great saxophone player, makes great records in his own right. I let him listen to the tracks, and I'm proud to say he couldn't tell which songs were recorded at the high-end studio and in Mark's basement. So that that to me, if we can stump a guy like him, I know we're on to something. So
awesome. Well, once again, congrats on the new album. Great to see you.
yes, sir.
And as I say, hope to see you in person, my friend. Real
Yes,
soon.
absolutely.
Real
Yes,
soon.
sir. Yeah,
All right.
do it.
Take care.
You too.
Bye for now, folks. You've been listening to and watching Chats with the Cats with Chris Greene.
www.soulandjazz.com.